everybody. Welcome. My name is David King, and I'm going to be taking you through today's workshop on trust, backed by popular demand, as I'm sure we all understand the essential element called trust. And without trust, pretty much any relationship is not going to function effectively. So I'm going to share my screen shortly, but I really want to remind you that today's session is a snippet of a course that HR Talk are running on this subject, trust. So this is a tantalizing taste of what can come if you partake in that, and the details of that will be at the end of this presentation. There is a chat function, as you know. Please, I encourage you to use that chat function. That's what it's there for, to chat, to ask questions, to put in comments, statements, links, if you have access to that. And I will make sure there's some time at the end just to check in on what any of you may have asked, or any comments that you may have put there. So let me share my slides. Right, so you may recognize the statement. What's trust got to do with it? Hopefully you will find out as we navigate today. The first thing I like to start off with in tackling this topic is that to remind you all that as human beings, we are hardwired for connection. It does not matter your personality type. We are designed, and that's thanks to our forefathers, that we are meant to be community. We are meant to rely on other people, and other people are meant to rely on us. So it's got nothing to do with your personality type, because generally, yes, some people will say that I'm more open to trust, and others will say I'm less trusting. But there's a story behind both of those. So the question I always like to start off with is to ask you, who of you are not trustworthy? Put up your hand. Raise your hand. Rajesh, you're not trustworthy. That's very vulnerable of you to share that with me. Change your mind. So why I always chuckle about asking this question is because that's probably one of the fundamentals that we as human beings are not going to admit to, except Rajesh. Thank you, Rajesh. I'm only joking. Because it's core to us. The belief that we cannot be trusted is something that we feel if we acknowledge that and admit that, society is going to completely reject us, or the person is going to completely reject us. So that's something we keep very close to our heart. So most of you will say to me that you are trustworthy. However, on this journey of exploration about trust, I'm going to challenge that theory, because what you will discover, and if you are open to inner work, to exploring the realities of who we are, you will discover that we all have elements that are not trustworthy. Okay, so we have to plant that seed in your head and have to come to terms with that. And we will discover this on the journey, and I'll give you some insight to it shortly. So it's important to start off with this slide around conscious mind and the subconscious mind. And why did I begin with that? And how does it all come together? So building trust requires alignment with both your conscious mind and your unconscious mind. So here's an example. So a conscious mind, if the conscious is deemed or efforts to demonstrate reliability, transparency, and care. So something that we are aware of. We also have unconscious mind. The examples here are signals like tone, facial expression, body language, and emotional congruence. How's that? In other words, we have to take both into account. So some things we are aware of, as we know, we're conscious of them as human beings, and other stuff is subconscious. And when we are talking trust, we have to take both into account. So obviously the conscious is easier to tackle because we are aware of it. It's the subconscious that's a little more challenging, but very fascinating. So let me give you an example. When people say the right things, but their unconscious cues feel off, others may not fully trust them. What does that mean? Okay, so here's an example. A leader may promote psychological safety in a room or meeting, but their body language is off, or they avoid eye contact. In other words, what is going on is that psychologists call it an incongruence between what you're saying, how you're behaving, and your body language. And if you want to see some good examples of that, then you must watch politicians, especially the leader of the free world, Donald Trump. Watch when he communicates and he speaks and what he's doing with his body. There's a disconnect, and it actually confuses us. Now, that's a brilliant example how what we are saying is not aligned to what our body is, what your body is telling you. That's why sometimes when somebody speaks to us, even though the words that are coming out their mouth might sound valid, their body isn't aligned to that. And that makes us confused. So here's a quote. When you fully trust someone without any doubt, you finally get one of two results. A person for life or a lesson for life. How's that? So pretty deep, but pretty helpful in navigating life as we journey when it comes to the concept of trust. So trust is a very, and I use the word complex thing. It's actually a skill. Why do I say complex? Because there's many, many, many components to trust. It's not just one thing. And when you attend the course, we delve into that quite a bit. We talk a lot around the work by Brené Brown, and very interestingly, there's some fascinating research that's recently come out, which often gets shared by Vanessa Van Edwards on body language and trust, which is really interesting, really helpful for us to better understand. But I want to just remind you and expose you, if you haven't seen this before, to the trust equation, because it's really helpful, and there's a story behind it. So it also shows us the complexity around trust. And there's different variations and versions of the trust equation. But let me explain it to you using your doctor, your family doctor or your local doctor that you visit when you're not well. So the trust equation looks like this. It's credibility plus reliability plus intimacy over what we call self-orientation. So let me tell you a story. When you go to visit your doctor, you're obviously ill. There's something is up. Now, what makes your doctor credible? Okay, think on that. How do you know your doctor is credible? So some of the answers to that would be that they have a qualification on the wall in the office that says they are a qualified doctor. Now, how many of you actually ever checked? Because every now and again, we come across in the press and social media somebody who's pretending to be a doctor, and they get away with it for a while. But I certainly haven't checked. Okay, it's because we believe, because of the environment, that the person has an office, they've practiced, you've been to them, you know people that have been to them, we deem them to be credible. Okay. Then the second point is reliability. How do you know your doctor is reliable? A number of reasons. Because perhaps you've been before and the doctor gave you instruction or gave you medication and you got better. So it means that if I go to this doctor when I'm ill and I share what my problems are, he or she repairs me, fixes me, helps me. Then we have intimacy. And what is intimacy? Intimacy is bedside manner, another word to use. It's a relationship you have with that doctor. So what does that mean? So it means that you feel comfortable sharing with that doctor. So sometimes if you've got a relationship with your doctor, you will share more than just your ailments. You will share with them your frustrations, your irritations, the fight you had with your partner, the stress you're having at work. You might even get to know each other around a bit of their personal space, in other words, the children you have, etc., etc. Now, credibility, reliability, and intimacy are three chunks that contribute to whether we trust somebody or not. Okay? And then these three are over what we call self-orientation, which is me. In other words, what is my attitude and my approach to trusts? Oh, now there's a whole story behind that one. Because remember, we have a story, we have a history with trust because of our background, because of our upbringing, because of our values, our morals, our culture, our traditions. We carry certain trust cues with us. Past experience may have taught us to trust or not to trust. So over and above credibility, reliability, and intimacy. So the doctor may be meeting all of those, but I myself, David, might feel that I can't trust people because previously I had a doctor that let me down. Okay, so this is just to highlight and to show you the complexity around trust with using your doctor as an example. So if you've got any questions, please pop them in and I will check them shortly. Now, there's some incredible research coming out, as I said, around trust. And there's a brilliant book called Trust by Dr. Henry Cloud. And I wanted to read to you this statement from his book. He says, trust is the currency that drives every relationship, beginning with the foundational bond between infants and their mothers. Okay, think about that critical stage of childhood development, extending to the trust networks that undergird every human endeavor, art, science, commerce, and binding together every relationship we've ever had or ever will. Nothing in our world works without trust. We may fight against it, deny it, put it aside, sweep it under the carpet, but subconsciously, it is there. And it's something that we need to probably spend our entire life better unpacking or better getting to learn. So I really encourage you to get this book by Dr. Henry Cloud. It's fascinating, and a lot of the course content comes from Dr. Henry Cloud. So he talks about these 5 components that he unpacks in his book: understanding, motive, ability, character, and track record. And let me just touch on these briefly, which we will go into far greater detail when you attend didn't say if anymore, when you attend the course. The first one, understanding. And the byline here says, you can trust someone when you feel your needs are understood, felt, and cared about. There's the human connection, hey? There's the embodiment. This is where empathy comes in. Remember, empathy is to connect, to relate, to better understand another human being, to try and see ourselves in another person. If we can't do that, guess what's going to happen to trust? If we are always holding back, if we're hesitant, if we're closed, you know what happens? No healthy trust is going to develop. So here I should pause and talk about healthy trust and unhealthy trust. So if we have had our trust broken, we are allowed to, because we are human, to suffer from that, because it's not great. However, guess what? You're not alone. It happens to everyone. And before you sit back on your high horse, you have been guilty of it too. You yourself have been untrustworthy. And I'll give you some examples shortly. The second one is motive. Think about it. Always think, what is the person's motive and what is my motive? So it's twofold. You can trust someone when you feel their motive is for you and not just for themselves. And we've got many stories. And sometimes you can't even explain it, but you're saying, the person is not doing it for me or for the betterment of society. They're doing it for self-enrichment or to get attention or to get glory. We are very sharp as human beings. We will eventually work it out. And once again, we can refer to politics or community leaders or people who run a department or division. You will very quickly pick up whether they're doing it for the collective or for the betterment of the team, the department, the organization, society, or the country. The third one is ability. You can trust someone when you feel they have the ability or the capacity to guard and deliver your results for what you have entrusted them to do. In other words, we have different abilities. So some people you will trust to cook. Some people you'll trust to babysit, and some people you will not. You will never leave your child or your pet with that person, but you're quite happy go on holiday with them or lend them money. So let's not be judgy again, because we have different skill sets. Think about it. And the same happens in business too. There's some people in the organization where you work that you will trust them when it comes to their skill set. So you'll trust the finance person, hopefully, to create the budget. But you're not going to necessarily trust the finance person to produce the marketing strategy. Why? Because that's not their skill set. So we can't blame a person often put in incorrect roles in an organization, and you wonder why they don't flourish, and you wonder why they're slapped to fail. So when we promote someone from having a skill to lead other people, and we don't give them any leadership skills, now you don't trust them. Well, because you didn't develop them. Very interesting one, ability. Character, we can never run away from our characters. You can trust someone who has the character, the personal makeup needed for what you entrust them with. How's that? So that's why there's sometimes a disconnect with personalities and clashes around who people are, because we are different beings. If we get to understand who we are, now we're tapping into EQ here. If we have self-awareness, if we're aware of other people, and we are aware, are able to self-regulate and pick up on other people's feelings and emotions, then it's going to once again assist us in being more empathetic and compassionate towards other people. And very importantly, it's going to assist us in not being hooked and triggered by other people, not judging other people. Because when we're not self-aware, we judge. Judgment, you will have heard in one of my previous workshops, is a human condition. It's natural to judge. However, the judgment is coming from us, remember? It's our issues that we are vomiting on another human being. And then the final component is you can trust someone who has a track record of performing in the ways you need them to perform. So how's this? There's a lot of talk here on consistency. Okay, we can't be trusted once. We have to be trusted at multiple times, because what you are showing me that you are competent and capable. Does that make sense? So this is where consistency is a very popular word that we use now in leadership development and in EQ. Consistency is key. Consistency is doing the same thing numerous times successfully or accurately. And now we're going to be comfortable being able to trust you. So think about when you're learning to drive a car. Those of you who have had to learn, those of you who may have children that are currently learning, well, the first time you get on the road, it's quite hair-raising and scary. And you probably would not trust that person to take you on holiday because, or even to go on the freeway. However, look back, think back, reflect, even reflect on yourself when you first may have learned to drive or even ride a bicycle. Is when you first started, it was very sketchy, very haphazard. Errors happen, mistakes happen. You stalled, you cut out, and sometimes you were like, I want to give up. I don't want to do this anymore. It's too hard. Okay. However, over time and with effective practice, what happens? You learn the skill, whether that's driving or whether that's Excel or whether that's using ChatGPT, identifying what the prompts are to use in ChatGPT. So the more effectively you are, the better your track, obviously, the better your track record becomes. And then just to wrap up this slide, I wanted to touch on trust issues because it's all very well now understanding what it is, the complexity around it, and we play a huge role in it. Besides finger pointing, blaming everybody else for not being able to trust them, how much blame lies on us. There's inner work we've got to do. But we need to also be honest and open about what are the potential trust issues we have. And guess what? These all stem from some of you may have heard of cognitive behavioral therapy. They stem from thoughts and experiences we've had before. That's where we're learning it from. Because remember, when we arrive on this earth, we are clean slates. And we pick up stuff along the way. And most of the stuff we pick up is in our flippant upbringing and in our family environments. Okay, that's where we molded the most. And we have to spend the rest of our lives unpacking, redirecting, cleaning up, resolving, and sorting out these childhood challenges that we've had. And you're not alone. Every single person has it. No one escapes, remember. Nobody escapes childhood trauma. So these are some of the issues that we battle with and why we find it very difficult to trust. Fear of depending on somebody else. Psychologists say there's two types of people in a relationship. How interesting is this? There's someone that is in a relationship. I'm talking about romantic relationships here. There's someone that is dependent, highly independent, and there's someone that is needy. How's that? How interesting is that? And that often causes the conflict, but it's necessary because it's not it can be challenging having two people who are exactly the same. So, and the psychologists insist on that in any relationship, there's normally someone that's more independent. They like their own space, their own time, and there's someone that requires the nurturing of the other person. And you see how sometimes that can cause conflict and friction. Fear of being controlled. How's that? Fear around imperfection, shame, and badness, which imperfection is Brene Brown has a wonderful TED talk on imperfection because we are all imperfect. There's no such thing as perfection. Shame is a pointless but damaging feeling. Okay? Because shame is that I am worthless, whereas guilt is I've done something wrong and I need to forgive myself, ask for forgiveness, repair and fix. Shame is I am wrong. Okay. And then trauma inequality, as we know, as a society, South African society, because of colonialism and apartheid, very traumatic experiences that we're still dealing with to this day. And then finally, the fear around oneself, not being comfortable to do some self-reflection, not being comfortable to do some exploration, because naturally, I think of an analogy of an iceberg. It is what we see, the tip of the iceberg is what we see. What's under the water is all our fears and anxieties and upbringings and trauma that we push under the water. We don't even know it's there. But guess what? All the answers are there. So we need to go and dabble down there. And what does that mean? And why do we avoid it? Because it's cold, it's dark, it's scary. And that's why often we need professional help. That's why we need to speak to counselors, and coaches, and psychologists and psychiatrists, and sometimes even go on medication. Okay, so we've got to rid ourselves of that traumatic nonsense of that it's scary. Yes, it absolutely is scary. But if you want to find the answers to why we behave the way we do, then that's where we've got to go and have a look. And repairing trust is a whole nother story, which you will tackle if you actually attend the course. So I want to just break here, and I'll leave that up, because if you want to take this further, then please contact the HR Talk team, contact training at HR Talk. And there's a whole myriad of courses that you can actually partake in. I want to just check if there are any questions may have arisen. Please feel free. I don't know if you have access to being able to type a question. I see you are muted. There we go. If you've got any questions, please, now's your chance. Type them in. So I hope this session was tantalizing enough for you to be able to want to dig a bit deeper. There's Jolene. So if there are no questions, I would love a question. I love questions. But if you want to dig a bit deeper, you know what to do. Please contact the HR Talk team on the email, and I'll pop that back up so that you can check. Otherwise, there we go. Thank you. Nomalanga, you saved the day. Thank you. Does the presence of silos in a team mean absence of trust? Ooh, nice juicy question. Could be one of the criteria. And I say one because they without doing some digging in that team, without a doubt, often when we don't trust each other, we form these silos for self-protection, or we might even have the view that we're better than, or we don't want to work with you because you're not as effective as we are. So yes, it certainly can be, but we need to dig a little deeper into that space, because sometimes it's just culturally how the culture of the organization has been created that causes that. Nashi, do you think people need to be trained to be trustworthy leaders before given that position? Like you spoke about body language, is there value in that? Absolutely. So it's a term, once again, we take it for granted that people understand trust. We take it for granted that people know how to lead. And to be a good leader, you have to trust. Because if you don't trust, guess what happens? You become a micromanager. That's where micromanagers are suffering from, because they do not trust. And there's a lot of research around this when it comes to hybrid and remote working, why some companies have asked everybody to come back versus some companies that allow some hybrid work or are completely remote. So there's a lot to delve into that. Just sharing my screen again so that you can see the final slide if you want to go.